Hey, I'm Jesse. Let's have a devotion. God watches over his people. He's been watching over his people since the very beginning, and he has not stopped. He's not gotten tired of it. He doesn't let up. He doesn't lose steam the way that we do. He watches over his people faithfully. He was watching over Esther. He was watching over the people of God as they rebuilt the temple using that original authorization given to them by King Cyrus. Here is Ezra chapter 5. I'm going to read you the final verse of chapter 4 just for context so you can see why there's a coordinating conjunction right here. Now, construction of God's house in Jerusalem had been stopped and remained at a standstill until the second year of the reign of King Darius of Persia. Okay, so they'd hit a standstill, and the previous verses are this anachronistically presented series of letters just to further explain other campaigns that would come up to try to stop the people of God from their construction. And what's interesting is that it includes a royal letter. Now, that's exactly the format of the prophet Haggai. The prophet Haggai, named right here in verse 1 of chapter 5, was also writing a royal letter, only instead of coming from a king, it was coming from the King of Kings. It's coming from God, and it's written to his people, and he's cracking some skulls because they're building themselves paneled houses while his temple remains incomplete. But when the prophets Haggai and Zechariah, son of Iddo, prophesied to the Jews who were in Judah and Jerusalem in the name of the God of Israel who was over them, Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, and Jeshua, son of Jozadak, began to rebuild God's house in Jerusalem. The prophets of God were with them, helping them. So there's a direct correlation between the time that Haggai and Zechariah begin to minister and begin to prophesy, and then construction speeds back up. Now, if you are pedantic and eagle-eyed and a critic of the Bible, you may have spotted what would look like an error here. I've spotted an error. All right, sorry, Eugene. You just haven't, son. Zechariah 1:1 says that Zechariah is the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo. And Aramaic bar, or its Hebrew equivalent ben, son of, both mean the same thing, descendant of Iddo. So if you're like an eagle-eyed critic and you thought you spotted an error, sorry, son, keep looking. At that time, Tattenai, the governor of the region west of the Euphrates River, this is a region called the Trans-Euphrates region, Shethar-Bozenai and their colleagues came to the Jews and asked, "Who gave you the order to rebuild this temple and finish this structure?" They also asked them, "What are the names of the workers who are constructing this building?" All right, and that's not the last of the questions that are going to come up here. There's more trouble, my friend, right here in River City. And this guy, Tattenai, he has a pretty big jurisdiction. He's over a huge swath of land. The good news is that our boy Zerubbabel is also appointed governor, and he has a region known as Yehuda or Judah. It's probable that I want to say Zerubbabel may have had to answer hierarchically to Tattenai, however. But Tattenai didn't answer directly to King Darius. He rather would answer to a guy named Ushtanu, who was he was appointed as a sort of a sub-governor by Darius in the year 520 BC. So the hierarchy would go like Zerubbabel, Tattenai, Ushbuntu, and then Darius. Did I say that name right? Ushtanu, sorry. Ushtanu, and then King Darius. So at that time, Tattenai, the governor of the region west of the Euphrates River, Shethar-Bozenai and their colleagues came up and acted like a bunch of Karens in the Jesse Campbell translation. Only these guys are way worse. So here's verse 5. This is everything right here. But God was watching over the Jewish elders. God was watching over them. These men would not stop them wouldn't stop them until a report was sent to Darius so they could receive written instructions about this matter. But I want you to remember this right here. God was watching over the Jewish elders. For one thing, this is the first time that we've seen elder polity used again in the post-exilic era for the Israelites. And the main message here is that even while they've come under fire, they've been asked, to pull their permits and to show where they got their authorization from. It's so funny, man. You can tell like every generation of Persian king has like a really short memory. It started with Cyrus, and then a couple generations later, we're already forgetting about it. And then like King Ahasuerus is going to completely forget about it. In the book of Esther, we see that Haman's like, "Hey, can I kill every Jew?" And then Xerxes is like, "Yeah, sure, have my ring." And like these guys don't read their history at all. Like it's terrible for them. But I want you to see how this theme echoes elsewhere in Scripture. Psalm 34 verse 15 is a prophetic psalm because it's quoted in John's Gospel right there at the Passion narrative. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, with the words the righteous. You could stretch it a bit and apply it to someone who repents when they sin. But as we've studied in John's Gospel, it's a prophecy about Jesus. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are open to their cry for help. But here's Psalm 33, verse 18. But look, the Lord keeps his eye on those who fear him, those who depend on his faithful love. Look at this legacy that Esther has inherited. Every leader of the Jewish people trying to rebuild the temple, even post-Babylonian captivity in the Persian era, has come under fire, has faced opposition, has faced an army of Karens, as was the case here in Ezra chapter 5, an army of dude Karens. Man, even worse, because they have like governor and sub-governor authority. They have gubernatorial Karens in Ezra chapter 5. Everybody's taking a turn trying to either kill the Jewish people or stop them from rebuilding the temple. Every generation. I mean, this was shortly before the era of Esther, and King Ahasuerus had no clue either. So, as we're going to continue studying in the narrative throughout Ezra, they're going to have to go dig through the historical record and find proof that King Cyrus was the one who started the Persian Empire. He also, by the way, for future reference, as we keep going in the text, he also liked to refer to himself as the king of Babylon, because he conquered Babylon in 539 BC. But they have to prove now, they have to dig back in their historical record. Their memory is so bad that they have to go on a scavenger hunt through the Persian library to find this original edict that King Cyrus decreed. And even in the midst of all of it, I want you to remember these words of verse 5, because they're just always true. In every era of of King Cyrus's dynasty, and in every era of God's covenant with his people. I think that Psalm 33:18 speaks a universal truth about God. It was true in the old covenant, and it's true today. There's nothing about God's nature that has changed. We live in a different covenant, but we serve the exact same God with the exact same heart. God was watching over the Jewish elders. God was watching over Esther, watching over Mordecai. He's watching over you. He watches over those who fear him. He's watching. He's watching. He's watching. You're not alone.